So I think we'll commence now. I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar, Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce webinar, Key Steps to Internationalising Your Website Whilst Working from Home, which we've all been doing for quite a while now. So it's a good opportunity for us to review how we ourselves internationally via the web and look at how some of the things can be done in order to improve our presence and getting through to people that wish to connect to us. So without further ado, I'll introduce myself. So my name's Anne White. I'm Head of International Trade at the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce. I have a team of 18 staff who are here to help all of the businesses in the Thames Valley, members and non-members, to trade globally, whether that be importing or exporting, looking to enter markets or looking to get their goods to markets in a safe, secure and effective way. So if anyone needs any information on trading globally, how to get goods to market, then please do contact us, the team at Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce, and we'd be more than happy to help you. So without further ado, today's presenter, we're going to hand over to Claire Snowdon. I'll tell you a bit about Claire, our speaker today. She is an international business advisor and director of Snowdon Consulting and a co-director of the No Fuss Group. She has over 30 years of international manufacturing and operational leadership with extensive business and cultural expertise, having lived and worked extensively in the Eastern Hemisphere, where she worked on multi-million-dollar programs in both the US, the UK textile and apparel manufacturing sector. As an experienced business international development and communication specialist, she now works with SMEs to help them work effectively across cultures and increase exports. She loves to travel and loves diverse cultures and has a long life ambition to visit all the wonders of the world, ancient, modern, forgotten and natural. Please welcome Claire Snowdon from Snowdon Consulting.
So thank you everybody. Before I move over onto the slides, I just wanted to say hello, let you have a look at what I look like, because sometimes we're talking to faceless people before I turn off my video and start the presentation. So thank you, Anne, for the invite. So, as with the UK's departure from the EU, COVID-19 is changing the way we live and do business, as well as raising all sorts of emotional, financial, political and logistical questions. And both crises have ramifications for many control. Businesses are being forced to open up the way for working from home, as well as looking for new ways of working. And many are seizing the opportunity to do things differently and maximize technology as everyone is forced to work online. Whatever the future holds, there will still be international trade, and to be able to develop and grow international sales, businesses will need to work harder on the communication front over the coming months and years to maintain their current market position or create a new position and attract new customers both at home and internationally. Now more than ever, businesses will need to have a clear local and international communication and digital strategy. And in the new business landscape, many will need to modify their products and services to suit their customers' new needs. Recent statistics show that over 59% of the world is on the web, but this is actually growing as the current crisis is helping to fuel this growth. And I'm sure that you want to be part of that growth. And one of the key ways is through your website. Your company's website is your shopfront and the gateway for your business, helping you to increase your international visibility, attract new leads and customers, as well as facilitate consumer research into your products or services. So before we get started, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the 3 fundamental steps or questions that you might have at this current time before you start working on your international plan. First of all, Think about how you will approach your project, how you will manage this project. What resources and support do you currently have? And what additional resources and support might you need going forward? And I thought I'd start by also mentioning some final thoughts about taking care of yourself in terms of your home setup, your house rules, and ensuring that you have time for you. So just some quick thoughts on that area. Sort out your simple work setup at home. Have the basics in place, which I'm sure you've already been working on. That applies to your workspace and your tech. Make sure that you have a time out and some quiet place to protect your work environment, and make a date with yourself to be able to keep it. Simple steps so that you can then tick off as you proceed forward. Look for a dedicated time in the day to do your international presence work, and ensure that you have procedures around time zones and the tech and the language protocols. And make sure that you take time out for you. At this time, for those of us who are continuing to work, it can be very stressful, so we need to take the time to ensure that we are able to focus when we come back into our workspace. So today, I will be talking about the key steps to building an international website whilst working from home. And in this webinar, I will share 3 principles of international online marketing and 8 key steps to help you create, develop, and refine your plan for building your international website. Steps that you can take to make your website more effective in your chosen international market or markets. An international website highlights your company's willingness and ability to trade with overseas clients and partners. And by undertaking research and evaluating your online presence, your company will be able to increase revenue from international sales, test new markets, and understand what appeals to your target market and how to cater for it. The website sits at the heart of your online presence. So when looking to show that you are ready and capable to trade internationally, it's important to ensure that you understand the benefits of your product or services to your customer and be clear on your USPs, products, and services, as your website is there to attract customers, initiate a call to action, and replace that personal contact, particularly important in these current times. So I will be running through the 8 steps. And the first step is mine your data, find the gold. So just to think about what data and information you're currently sat on. Existing customers in particular and past clients. Have a look at your past clients and review your referrals and recommendations from the past. 80% of all new business historically comes from this area. You don't know who you are doing it with. So don't outsource this type of work and research. Step 2, keep your finger on the pulse. What has changed since COVID and the new trade opportunities that are starting to come online post leaving the European Union? So online research and offline research is key. And now might be the time for you to ensure that you understand what's going on in the marketplace, what new trade deals are coming online. So one of the ways to do this would be through online research, Google research, keyword research, using LinkedIn as a tool to research for content and who the influencers and thought leaders are. You could join discussion groups, go to experts, review websites and seek support from organizations like the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Department for International Trade. Offline, you could speak to people that are working in the area of international trade. You could look at past communications. You could seek support and information from your agents and distributors. And you could look at what emerges from the data and ensure that you are keeping on top of the data. And at the moment, there are many, many international sites and information that's being updated that you can connect to. So for example, the gov.com website has a wealth of information, as well as many trade sites. So through the next 3 slides, I'll be touching on the 3 international marketing principles that I mentioned earlier. And we now move to step 3. Step 3, people buy from people they trust. So these are the 3 online marketing principles. People buy from people they trust, put yourself in your customer's shoes, and think global, act local. So we'll start with step 3, people buy from people they trust. So when marketing online, we need to take into account both people and search engines. And when it comes to Google, amongst other indicators, they use trust rank to rank websites. The higher your trust rank, the higher the ranking of your site. And some of these factors included are quality and number of backlinks, the page and trust rank of your sites that are linking to you, consistency of information and content, domain age, whether you have listed your current updated sitemap with the search engines, and privacy and legal policies are in place, and that you have a clear and well-populated About Us page. And search engines are in it for the long run, the long game, and they are your first and most important customer, the gateway to the people who need you. Their reputations are fiercely protected, so your website needs to earn its place and prove its worth with them if you are to reach your potential customers. When it comes to people, this first principle refers to whether your company's online presence, and specifically whether your website, is ensuring that a visitor can feel confident about your company and what you are selling, and that you have a clear customer service approach. So when it comes to building trust, and ultimately, what erodes your trust when you're looking at a website for your support? So put yourself in your customer's shoes. Step 4, are you clear on your customer profile, and are you showing how much you care about your customers? Do you speak their language? Quite literally. To put language in context, out of the world's 7.5 billion inhabitants, did you know that only 7% speak English as a first language? And most of these people aren't native English speakers, with only about 360 million people speaking English as their first language. So your customers want to know how much you understand and you care about them. Research shows that having your website in a local language has the potential to increase sales by 400%. So visitors to your website want to not only be able to trust you and understand what you are saying, but also what you can do for them. So you need to focus on the benefits to them and not just explain what it is that you do. Research shows that we have less than 1.7 seconds to capture a visitor's website attention on our website before they leave. So normally we have 2 key questions around this area. We need to make sure that people stay and follow a call to action when they're on our website. So the questions that people ask fundamentally when they first click on your website is this page relevant, and have you got what I want, and do I trust this site? So what does your website show to your local and international visitors, and does it have what they want? Next slide, please. Slide 10. Think global, act local. Global competition demands that your website is properly localized in order to succeed internationally and be able to compete on a local level. Successful international businesses understand that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work when delivering products and services across different markets. Creating goodwill and establishing credibility with local markets is critical if you want to prosper. Localization is where a business actively seeks to differentiate its global products, services, and communications to its individual markets and regions, and to embrace and accommodate those differences. Done correctly, this leads to improved results, such as increased ROI, return on investment, awareness, and engagement. So does your website have localized content and cater to the needs of your international customers by location? Are you easy to find, easy to do business with whilst working from home? And what do you need to put in place to ensure this? Is your website accessible? Is it still accessible? Do you have a process in place for handling inquiries whilst working from home? And how will any foreign language inquiries be handled whilst working from home? Do you have plans in place? Cultural knowledge, how is this being shared across your team? You'll potentially, if you have a team, have a resource of valuable information that you can go to, particularly at this time whilst working from home, for this type of cultural research online. Next slide, please. Step 6. So what steps can you take to develop an international website presence? Create an action plan. So for the purposes of today's webinar, I'm going to assume that you already have defined your export strategy. That is to say, how you are going to engage with international customers, what products or services you are going to sell in what markets you're going to focus on, and whether you're going to work with distributors or agents. If you've not done this already, here are some quick 5 ways that you can use to help you develop and clarify your strategy. Pick a market location where you have experience or someone in your team, if you have one, has had experience. Look at in-house language skills. You may be surprised how many skills you have. Look back at past service or product deliveries to see where you have been successfully delivering. Do your research and seek help from organizations like Thames Valley Chamber and the Department for International Trade, who can support you defining your target markets. And finally, check if certain trade rules or requirements in a particular country will support your business model and not be too complex to start exporting to, particularly at this time when there are new trade deals taking place and potentially coming online. Next slide, please. So once you have your export strategy, you need to then move on to your website strategy. And I use this slide, which is a really useful tool for you to perhaps print out once you get the slides after the presentation has ended, that you can use as a roadmap to follow the different steps that you can take. So we started with export strategy, and I believe that you either have that in place or you need to have that in place before you start to develop your international web presence. So we've now moved into step 1, the web strategy. So what can you do now to develop your international website whilst working from home? Are you happy with your UK website, and is it fully optimized in English before you start to add complexity? This is normally a place where many companies fall down. They want to move very quickly into an international site, but haven't taken into account whether their UK site is working to its optimum strength for them. So review your website domain name. For example, if you're on a country code top level domain, for example, clairesnowdon.co.uk, it would be important at this time to review the possibilities of securing a generic top level domain, for example, clairesnowdon.com. You will then be able to internationalize and create structure that can be optimized for your international markets that you've chosen. Purchase the domain names that apply to your chosen markets. And again, these can be secured in many cases for a reasonable price. And then you can save them when you are ready to potentially host in the future local domains. In the meantime, you can still use them by 301 redirecting them into your main domain. There's a tip here to keep in mind. Many people say to us, but the domain name's not available. Somebody else has the domain name that we would require. So perhaps you could look at adding the word international or global to your domain name if your current domain name is not available. Next slide, please. So here's a slide explaining about the evolution of an international web strategy. So I've mentioned about the step one, getting it right in the UK first and optimizing in the UK English on a .co.uk site. And as you start to think global and then move into act local, you're looking to optimize your website with international pages and global English perhaps. I'll talk about that later. And then moving through in the future to acting local. That is to say, having local websites with local domains and local content and local links. So decide on the best structure for your website. A global message is where you will state in your copy that you are working and ready for business internationally. Perhaps you could have an international section on your top line navigation or your homepage explaining where your products are sold and services delivered. It would be best practice if you're targeting a specific country, perhaps you're already moving into acting local, and it would be best practice to have that local domain, for example, clairesnowdon.fr for France. Keeping in mind that some countries will require you to have local presence or a registered office, for example, until they will allow you to purchase a local domain. Your international website is an ongoing journey, and you could have different strategies and structures for different countries and languages that will change as time moves forward. But certainly this is a good tool to use to look at, to understand where you are and where you want to get to in terms of moving from an optimized UK site to thinking global and then acting local. Next slide, please. So you're now ready to build the website, and you'll need to take into account the design, the navigation, the technical aspects of the build, making sure that your website is well designed and has a compelling homepage with user-friendly navigation, clear calls to action, and that the site is international friendly with culture-appropriate images and media. And I thought it was very interesting in the poll earlier that we highlighted that this was one of the key things that we wanted to ensure that we had well-designed websites. So make sure that your website has all the relevant coding, for example, UTF-8, that it's UTF-8 enabled. This Unicode allows you to use characters from countless writing systems in your website build, and is something that you need to ensure if you are looking to grow your website internationally, that you are starting off with the right platform. You could start by looking at competitor websites or websites in the marketplace that have layout and content that works for your particular market. This would help you to decide on the types of information, navigation and flow that you might like, or that brands that are doing well in the marketplace are already using and therefore might be expected in that marketplace. So I thought I'd show you some website examples. Next slide, please. So you could use global templates for consistent branding. It's a really good template that Airbnb use, for example. When someone lands on your multi-language page or website, you want them to have a consistent user experience, no matter which language version your site they land on. So on the next slide, we'll see the Spanish visitor site. Next slide, please, Anne. So this, as you can see, it almost looks as if we haven't changed, using the template branding for the Spanish site and all the other language sites that Airbnb use. Next slide, please. In the next few slides, I'm going to be showing you an example from Nigel Wright. It's an organization based up in Newcastle, and they've been using a template system for a number of years. These are in fact their old templates that they've allowed us to share with you today. But it's really interesting for you to see how this is the UK site, and what they've done is they've identified and used the relevant information for the UK, for example, the UK telephone number. But to help quickly identify which site the person's on, they've also used flags in the wing mirror of the car. So if we move to the next slide, you'll see that they've then changed. On the next slide, please, Anne, you'll see that they've changed to the German site where they've got the German flag in the window. Next slide, please. And here in Paris, we've changed all the information for France, and we've got the image that's easily recognizable for that location. Next slide. And here we have Belgium. Interesting to note, this company have been very understanding of the language expectations in this country, and they've got also Flemish and French speaking, and so they have utilized that language navigation for people that come to this part of the site. Next page, please. HSBC is a very good example of navigation for the various international sites. So this is the UK site. If we move to the next slide, we see that they are moving with into Australia, so slightly different navigation and look and feel with images that are appropriate for that location. Next slide. And here we have the India site and the information that's relevant and appropriate images for that site. Next slide, please. Next page, please. And here's the Chinese part of the site. As you can see, starting to see a change in the images, much more busy in terms of the information. Next slide, please. And here we have the UAE. Now this is the one of the pages for the UAE, and HSBC are very conversant and understanding of cultural differences, and they know their customers well. So on the next slide, we'll see that they also have their site in Arabic. The Arabic language, very important in this location because HSBC are aware that a lot of the decision makers are wanting to read their own international language. Next slide, please. Now, in this slide, what I wanted to show you is the different ways that you can have language navigation. So here, this great Visit Melbourne site is an example of how you can have drop-down menus for language, giving a clear understanding. One of the things I want to highlight is to be aware about using flags. Many sites use flags. And the reason I want you to be aware is that many sites use them incorrectly. So for example, if we take the Spanish flag, or the flag of Spain, I should say, if we were to be using that but wanting to direct our traffic to Spanish speakers, we need to be very, very careful, because as we know, Spanish is spoken in many parts of the world, and not all of those Spanish speakers identify with the Spanish flag. So it's very important to understand your customer and what kind of navigation might work for them. Next slide, please. You might want to think about navigation to do with language and regions. So switches that's easy for your customers to understand your navigation and where they can go to find the information that they want. So British Airways is a good example of this. Here you can see that you can choose by language and region. If we move to the next slide, you'll be able to see that you can actually, on the British Airways website, you'll be able to choose by the drop-down menus, not only the country and region, but also the language that you want. Now, I understand that not everybody on today's webinar certainly is the size or has the funds at their disposal, like some of these companies that I'm sharing information and slides with you today. But really what I want to do is help you to understand the various ways that you might be able to design and use navigation and language indicators on your site for different people that you want to attract and that you want to have to be able to use good navigation on your site. So you can take some of these ideas as part of your design structure. Next slide, please. Facebook's a really good example of auto-detecting languages. And we can see here that you can create an account and the navigation. And then on the next slide, you can see that they've got a template that they've used for the Arabic language here. So auto detection is where somebody coming to your site from their various, through the search, they can be understood which site to serve up through Google or the various search engines that might be applicable. And that's a time where I should mention that not all search engines are Google. Not all countries' locations use Google as their key search engine. There are many other search engines out there. So you just need to be aware of that when you're looking to do your international search. And that'll come up later on another slide. So if we move to the next slide, we're now into step 7, mind your language and manners. So we need to be clear on your international content of your website and be sure that you have well written and clear localized and translated content to ensure trust and confidence. If you're not ready to translate your whole website yet, and this is one of the key areas that we find most people, most companies have concerns about, and that is when and how difficult it might be to use language in terms of translation or transcreation of their website. So one of the ways, if you're in the early stages of going international, might be to look at using what's referred to as international English or global English. So if we move to the next slide, I can explain a little bit about that. So we're in the international content area, and if we move to our next slide, we'll be able to see some of the key changes that you might be able to take with regards to writing your content in international English. So let's say you currently have a UK site. You want to start to share and show that you are an international site, not only to the search engines, but also to potential customers. You could look at starting by just writing your current site in international English. What does that mean? It means thinking about what it might be like for a second language or third language English speaker to come to your site. So you might look at reducing the volume of the content, the text, not too text heavy, so it's easier for people to understand with limited English skills. Keep the sentences short. A good way to do this is through bullet points. Simplify the language. For example, you might be using language which makes sense in your current UK marketplace, but perhaps is difficult for people that are not first language English speakers. So an example here would be to use the word staff as opposed to perhaps human resources. Avoid jargon, acronyms, slang, and insider talk. We find that many companies have their own language within their organizations or the types of businesses or services that they are in. And just be aware that you might have new people, new customers that don't understand those terms. So you could look at explaining that language, or you could try to avoid that jargon and use some plain terms. An image and a video speak 1,000 words. So where you can, use visual support where possible. This helps with areas like translation, but also helps if you aren't ready to move into translation, helping you to explain perhaps complex systems or processes or values about the product or services that you're selling. Use bullet points, I mentioned earlier, and use underlining and bold to highlight keywords. And don't make assumptions. So one of the things we would always say is about any copy that you're writing, just to check it out with perhaps a customer that you're already working with. You could ask for their feedback about your information, or share it with people who have knowledge or skills about the location or the language that you are using. Next slide, please. Whoops, we've jumped to. So when it comes to graphics and images, whilst ensuring that the images you have are culturally sensitive for different audiences, also be aware that not all countries have high-speed internet access, which means that flash animations or bandwidth-sapping graphics may be an issue to load. And as we now live in a world where ensuring that your website loads quickly, as I mentioned earlier, this would be imperative. So the next slide is the next few slides actually are around the Nescafe campaign. And what I wanted to share with you here is some examples of how they've utilized not only the layout and navigation on the site, but understood the cultural implications. So here, for their site in China, they know that moving images and video are really powerful for people to engage with sites. So this is an example you can't see on this slide, but this is actually a video of coffee. So immediately there's an impact when the person comes to the potential customer comes to the site to see this image. If we move to the next slide. Here, they've understood that they need to be very aware of the types of culturally sensitive images for people that might be visiting their site from Arab-speaking or EU, UAE type locations. So here, what I've chosen this slide for is to show that they've very cleverly used some icons to describe what they want, the message they want to get across in this image, as opposed to trying to find a suitable image that might be culturally insensitive. So I thought this is a really good use of icons. So perhaps this is something that you could think about with your images for your website. And then the third slide from Nescafe. Next slide, please, Anne. Yeah, that's it. And then here's for the UK, part of the website. So choosing an image that talks to the emotional connection that people might have with their coffee. So next slide, please. So the final step 8, is can you be found? So international SEO is the process of helping your website to be found. It's the process of optimizing your website so that the search engines can easily identify which countries you want to target and which languages you use for business. So maybe you have time whilst working from home to do some research and training in this area. There's some really good resources out there. Digest from Google's SEO guide can really give you some great tips about SEO and international SEO, and also tips about how to use their Google Search Console. And there's also the Google Academy, where you can actually take the classes and then have a small test at the end to see how well you've captured the information. And then you can have a Google Academy certification, a really, really useful tool, particularly if you have workers at home. Most SEO agencies and freelancers are well versed in working from home. So if you're looking to work with an SEO agency or a freelancer and you don't already, just to be aware that many of these well-resourced and experienced individuals do already have experience of working remotely, and so you shouldn't have any major concerns about how to engage with those as new suppliers. And take the time, perhaps whilst working from home, to do keyword research. You could do some sessions where you talk to other people, maybe in your sector, or have a chat with key clients that you've had in the past and listen out for the keywords that they're using. You could perhaps do surveys online at this time. There's some great ways that you can connect with people on LinkedIn. You could perhaps do some interviews. You could also help you to create some case studies, which are great for your website to ensure that people can read about past clients and how happy they are about your products and services. You can use social media, a great pool of resources to be able to connect and communicate and do research with potential clients, and just general research, Google search research around your chosen products or services or marketplaces. Next slide, please. So on our international web presence journey, we're now on to the final section, which is about international SEO, search engine. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, just back one slide. I'm sorry, you were on the right slide. So international SEO best practices include your URL structures. I mentioned that earlier about the structure of your domain for your international site. Whether your site is language targeted, so that you have language pages, or perhaps you're going to go a country route and have country pages. So show, if you're going the language route, show search engines which languages you're set up using what's known as hreflang. Now, some of this is technical and you perhaps will need support from your web developer or the person that's supporting you with your website build. But just to be aware that there is a facility called hreflang that helps to ensure that your website is displaying the correct language for the correct market search where you want it to. And other signals that can help to show search engines that your site targets are specific to a specific country could include hosting your site on a local IP address, linking to local content. So make sure that if there's a good content out there that applies to your product or services, you can link into that as a resource. Find ways to rank on local search engines. And I mentioned earlier, not all search engines for different locations are Google. So for example, Yandex in Russia or Baidu in China. So I've tried to help you to understand some steps that you can take, steps 1 through 8. If we move to the next slide, for your key steps to internationalizing your website whilst working from home. And this is the page, or the page of the presentation that I mentioned might be quite good amongst the other pages to print off and use as your navigation tool for going through the steps for your own international website. Build, refresh, or refine. So number 1, mine your data. There's lots of gold in your data, past clients, past work that you've done, past visitors to your site through Google Analytics. You maybe have had some people coming to your site using a different language or coming from a different location, and you can find that in your Google Analytics. If you don't have your Google Analytics, now might be a good time to find out if your web developer has done that for you, or to be able to gain access and check your data if you aren't already. There's also a really good tool in Google Analytics where you can schedule your own layout on the site for the information that you're interested in seeing on a timely basis. And you can actually create a function in there to send you an email, and you can choose whether you want that data to be sent to you on a daily basis or a weekly or monthly or whatever you decide is best for you. But certainly make sure that you look back at your data and find the gold in there. Step 2, keep your finger on the pulse. This is all around ensuring that you understand your customers, what they're doing, what's impacting them at this time of working from home, but also what's going on in your sector or marketplace, and making sure that you are connected in and if you can have timely updates on information that might impact your product or service, particularly if you're working internationally. Step 3, make sure you can be trusted. So we mentioned about the trust factors, and you also chose in the poll what puts you off, what makes you not trust a website, or makes you think that a website isn't trustworthy. So can you be trusted? Is your website showing what you need to show to the world? So take a look at that. Step 4, put yourself in your customer's shoes. So with websites and all content, both offline and offline and online, it's all about your customer. Make sure that you are writing in a way that you're ensuring you understand the needs and you are addressing those and making it about your customers' needs and not necessarily what it is that you do. Step 5, think global, act local. So be aware of the fact that your website, if you're going international, there are ways to ensure that you have the right structure, navigation, and content that can be served up to local overseas by language or country. Step 6, have a plan. It's all about planning. So go through the international website presence page. That's a really good one for understanding how you might set up your plan, through from an export strategy to a website strategy, right through to your SEO plan. Step 7, mind your language and manners. So it's all about the customer in terms of their language, what their needs are, and make sure that your images and any information that you're sharing is culturally sensitive. And step 8, can you be found? It's all about the SEO. If you've got a great website, but it's not being served up in the location or to the people or in the language that it needs to be, then you will not be found. And however brilliant I know you are in terms of your service or your product, you literally won't be able to connect with the people and potential customers, and you won't be able to increase your sales internationally. So if we move to the next slide. So that concludes my presentation for today. I trust that you found this webinar informative and helpful in reviewing your own international website plans, and that you can use the key steps, the 8 key steps, to build and refine your international website. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn and follow your journey. So for all webinar signups today, we do have the offer with Thames Valley Chamber of a free website health check for your business. If this is something you're interested in, we do a 30-minute session that you can sign up to. So you could either connect with me on LinkedIn and sign up for that health check, send me a private message saying, hey Claire, I'd love to have a health check and chat with you for 30 minutes. Or you could do that through Thames Valley. Thames Valley will then direct you to the right way to connect to get that free 30-minute service. I would love anyway, even if you did not at this time want to have that health check, perhaps the timing's not right for you. I know everybody's very, very busy, but I'd love to do that if you are available. But if you're not, I'd still love to connect with you on LinkedIn, hear about your plans for going international, and start a conversation with you and hopefully be able to support you on your international journey. So I now hand back to Anne. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. That's a lot packed in a short period of time, and Claire and I have worked together for a little while now, and I never fail to actually learn something new every time she does a presentation. And you know, the Chamber, we are looking at that. You know, we will be utilising Claire's services as well. We have an international site that's that's aimed at companies on inward investment into the UK, and that, you know, Claire will be at some stage doing that actual health check for us as well. So there is an opportunity, but I think we've got a couple of minutes. If anyone has any questions, please do type it in the question and answer session. Despite the little technical glitch, I think obviously there's a bit of a problem on the line which causes it to freeze. Everyone stayed on, so I appreciate that, and obviously it's an interesting topic. If anyone does have any questions, please do just type them into the Q&A box and we'll move forward. But it is quite amazing how much information you do gather from these sessions, and please do take that opportunity to take up that 30-minute slot, because it is a free health check. You do get some really good, useful, basic information back from Claire, and it's there, it's available to you for Chamber members, and it's a good source of where to start. So I think it will be very useful. So we've had some things coming in on the chat, so let me have a look at that. So Claire's obviously, she's getting a few comments to say how useful it was. Well, somebody's asked, would you say that Google Translate, how good, useful Google Translate is? Claire. Claire, you're on mute, sorry.
I think we're really struggling. There seems to be some internet connections. I'm not sure which side, where it's coming from, but I do apologize. I hope that people you know, could hear and got value from the content, because as I mentioned,
somebody's asked Claire what you think about Google Translate.
Oh, I bet that's a language translation person. Yes, Google Translate has its place. It has its place. Let's, you know, and translation automated tools are getting better and better, but let's put them in the place where they add value. And where they add value is doing your research. So perhaps you're doing some research, there's some language you don't understand. You could use Google Translate to give you a quick understanding of some information. Perhaps you have somebody from overseas that sent you an email and you kind of know the language perhaps, or you don't at all. Google Translate would be really great to be able to quickly have an understanding of what that person's saying to you. I use that tool when I am potentially going to communicate with another person overseas. And I think there's some complicated words in English. I know that they speak good English, but perhaps those words I want to share are complex, in which case I go and I use Google Translate to understand that word so I can explain to them and perhaps use the term in their own language. So there's definitely a place for Google Translate. Where it doesn't have a place is in creating important and valuable content for your website. Your website and your online communication needs to be the best it can be. The same way in English, you wouldn't put broken English or spelling mistakes on your English website. The same applies to your international or your language-focused or country-focused website. And we do say that you should be looking at, if you have a UK website and you want to then have perhaps a page or pages in France or a French website, for example, you should be looking to do what's called transcreation. And transcreation is where you have a native language speaker who understands your business, who understands the potential types of customers and clients you're trying to attract. And you then give them the understand, you give them the UK copy, for example. What they don't do is translate line for line. What they do is they take that copy and they transcreate it into the language of French, and they write it how a native speaker would either write it or expect to receive and read that language. Very big difference. So yes, Google Translate has its place for the place I've mentioned, but when it comes to copy that you're going to be using to share with online and offline language speakers in those countries, it needs to be the best it can be. And so you need to use a good translation company, and there are some good companies, and in our region there are some great companies. So yeah, use them.
Fantastic. Another question's coming as to what to look for in a good localization partner.
A good localization partner. So this is, I believe you're coming from the sort of the website point of view in relationship to content and also structure of the site. Yeah, there are a number of things to keep in mind. First of all, there are many web developers who you might have been working with. We have many examples of a company that's been working with a web developer for many years on their UK site. They then go international, either multi-country or multi-language, and they just are so used to working with that web developer, they just continue. And it isn't until later down the line they realize that perhaps they wish they had done some more research. And that research is around whether that company has the capability, whether they have multi-language and multi-country either structure of the website, the best way to create the structure, the best way to ensure that your website or those pages is found in the relevant search engines, but also that they understand what the navigation, the content, and the best way to create the website for you. And it isn't always a given that your current web developer will have those expertise. So you do need to look at their past experience, any case studies. Perhaps you've got a language or a country that's specifically something you want to utilize for your web build. Then it would be important to see whether they have those skills, whether they've done that, whether you can see evidence, whether they can show you evidence that they've worked with a particular customer. And if you can, not only see their case study, but also ask that potential company that you're thinking of working with for whether you can actually have a conversation with that client, see whether that client was happy and whether their website is working for them. So I would definitely do your research. They do need to have expertise, not only in terms of the tech build and how to build the site, but also the relevant content. And it may be that you have to use two service providers, an SEO agency that's good at the structure and a translation or a language company that's good at the localization language side of things. It's not, excuse me, it's not always a given that companies do both. I think one of the greatest learnings that I had early on in my career was how when we think of web development, we think a web developer does everything. They don't. There are web developers that are good at design. There are web developers that are good at particular locations. There are web developers that are good at content. There are web developers that are good for a specific type of client or customer. And sometimes our brief doesn't fit. And so we need to do our research and perhaps use a number of suppliers and bring them together to support us.
Thank you, Claire. I'm conscious of time. There's been a lot of chat over the thing saying how useful the session's been, Claire. So thank you very much for that.
Oh,
very
great.
complimentary about you. So that's good. And somebody's actually asked whether the content will actually be recorded. It has been recorded, and apologies, I should have said that at the beginning. And it will be made available to you. We will be sending you a question, a feedback questionnaire and a copy to the link after today's webinar. So you'll have all the slides and everything. So thank you to Claire for today. I'm just going to wrap up. I just mentioned a couple of things about the chamber. If I can get the presentation to
yes, we've been struggling. I mean, I've been doing webinars last week and this week, and I don't know, today the internet is just
everyone's on it, obviously.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention the Chamber of Commerce, Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce COVID-19 Business Continuity Toolkit, which is available on the website. It's everything your business will need to know, all of the guides from the government, all of the opportunities, the funding, everything is there. So please visit the website, look at the toolkit, and also what it also is doing, it is actually, we're highlighting what we have done on behalf of our members. So if you are a company, any business, and you have some real issues, some real problems, you're not getting the response you hope to get from the various funding schemes, etc., you're having problems with it, anything to do with Brexit, please let us know, because we have been representative in government every week talking on behalf of businesses across the country. And some of you may have also seen our COVID-19 tracker survey, which has come out for the last 8 or 10 weeks. And the latest one is now out as well. We're looking for all businesses to actually respond to that. And at the moment, I think the last one is relating to to how businesses are actually starting to get back into work, what plans they put in place. But these things are going directly to government. Government are listening. We are knocking on the door every day with things, and we're there. We're an apolitical organisation, so we can criticise as well as work with. So we want to represent your views. So please keep them coming. We've had lots of good views from small companies all the way through to the big multinationals. So we're here to help you with all aspects of and issues that may be coming across during this unfortunate time. So thank you for that. And the last thing, I'm just going to put the final slide up about our membership. We are, we're a local, large regional chamber with local engagement, regional representation, and also exploring the global opportunity, of which obviously one of the webinar today has been one of the series that we actually run, training courses we run. So thank you very much to everyone for participating. Thank you, Claire, for a wonderful presentation, Anne. As usual. And we hope to see you again, and hopefully please take advantage of Claire's offer. So we hope to see you again on another Chamber of Commerce webinar, and take care.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hello, Anne.
Hello. I'm hoping I've stopped broadcasting. I think so. Yeah.
I think it says, doesn't it, at the top? I don't know what happened, my dear. I'm so sorry.
No. I think I think it's okay, because I texted her and she said she basically edits all that stuff out.
Okay.
So I think the problem, I think what happened was
something froze. I couldn't get the screen to move.
Well, it was funny because your sound went a bit funny as well. So there must be a glitch on you.
I think it was the internet, and it froze everything. Oh, goodness me.
We did it. You know. It's just, these sorts of things are just about not panicking, aren't they?
I don't think I panicked. Did I panic?
No, you didn't.
Okay,
no.
Good.
Neither of us did. We're very cool. Underneath our little legs, we're going like that.
I was going like, what's happening?
But no, it's very good. Very useful feedback. People were coming in saying, it was really
good.
So thanks.
Okay, great.
And we'll get that out.
So just a couple of things I wrote. I was reminded by my colleague the other day, and I was like, ooh. Slides to go out in PDF only, I think. They don't go out in live slides because of our IP.
Yeah.
IP. Yeah, we don't want them to kind of grab our whatever graphics or things. And I'll send you an email about all the testimonial stuff just to recap everything that we talked about at the beginning of the call. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to get a copy of the